On November 14th, 1908, Emperor Guangxu of the Qing dynasty died inside the Forbidden City. He was 37 years old. He had been a prisoner in his own palace for 10 years. On November 15th, 1908, the very next day, Empress Dowager Cixi died in the same compound. She was 72, one day apart. The man who had been emperor in name, the woman who had been emperor in everything but name, both gone within 24 hours of each other. In 2008, exactly a century later, Chinese forensic scientists published the results of tests on Guangxu's remains. His hair and bones contained arsenic concentrations 2,000 times higher than normal. He had been poisoned. The timing of his death, the day before Cixi, was not a coincidence. She had controlled China through puppet emperors for approximately 47 years. She had never held the title of emperor. She had never not been the ruler. Stay with me, because this story begins with a 16-year-old girl stepping into the Forbidden City and ends with a poisoned emperor, a convenient death, and a 2-year-old on the dragon throne. In 1851, the Qing court held the imperial concubine selection, a ritual conducted every few years in which the daughters of Manchu bannerman families were evaluated for entry into the emperor's household. Officials inspected thousands of candidates. Most were sent home. A small number were chosen and ranked within an elaborate hierarchy of 8 grades. Yehenara Xingzhen was 16 years old. Her father was a minor official. She had no particular advantage, no powerful family connections, no extraordinary wealth. She was chosen anyway, assigned the rank of Noble Lady Yi, 5th of 8 grades. She was given a palace apartment and a number. The Forbidden City she entered was a world unto itself. 9,000 rooms behind walls that ordinary Chinese would never see. The women inside rarely saw the emperor at all. A concubine might spend her entire life waiting. Most did. Yehenara spent 4 years barely noticed. Then, in 1856, she gave Emperor Shanfeng something no one else had managed to give him: a surviving son. The boy's name was Zaichun. He was Shanfeng's only male heir. Overnight, the woman who had been a number in a filing system became the mother of the next emperor. She began studying the documents that passed through the palace. She taught herself the literary Chinese required for imperial correspondence. She had been selected for her face. She was preparing for something else entirely. In 1860, the Second Opium War reached Beijing. British and French forces burned the old summer palace. Emperor Shanfeng fled northeast to the imperial hunting palace at Chengde and never came back. He died there in August 1861, broken at 30 years old. His will appointed 8 senior ministers as a board of regents to govern during the minority of the new emperor. His 5-year-old son, Zaichun. Cixi was given an honorific title, the appropriate rank of Empress Dowager, and no power. The 8 regents were confident. The woman in the inner palace had no army, no official position, no access to the outer court. They had made a catastrophic miscalculation. Cixi had spent 4 years reading every state document that passed through the inner court. She understood the bureaucracy. She understood which officials resented the 8 regents. She understood the structure of the imperial seals. And crucially, she knew that 2 imperial seals were required to authenticate any decree. One seal was held by the regents. The other she had been given as a courtesy. No one had expected her to understand what that meant. In November 1861, Cixi and Qian acted. The coup is called the Xinyu coup, named for the year in the Chinese calendar. The two Empress Dowagers issued decrees accusing the 8 regents of overstepping their authority. They allied with Prince Gong, the emperor's uncle, and a powerful figure the regents had marginalized. The regents were arrested before they could organize resistance. The 2 leaders were executed. The others were stripped of rank. Within 3 months of Emperor Xianfeng's death, a 25-year-old woman who had entered the palace as a minor concubine was co-regent of the Qing Empire. She had not fired a weapon. She had outread, outmaneuvered, and outweighted men who had spent their entire careers accumulating power. For 20 years, Cixi shared power with Empress Dowager Cixi. Historians debate the exact division of authority. By most accounts, Cixi was the senior figure by protocol, but less interested in governing. Cixi ran the empire. She governed from behind a yellow silk screen. Qing court protocol required that a woman not be seen by male officials. So she sat on one side, the ministers on the other. Her voice directed the empire through a curtain. In April 1881, Qian died suddenly. She had been in good health the day before. The cause was never fully established. Cixi was now sole regent. Her son, Emperor Tongji, had died in 1875, at 18, officially of smallpox. The grief, if she felt it, did not slow her. Under Qing succession law, the new emperor should have been from the next generation, a child who would eventually produce a son to honor Tongji's spirit. Instead, Cixi selected her 3-year-old nephew, Zaitian, a child from her own generation, which meant she could serve as regent again. Officials protested. A member of the imperial clan killed himself on the steps of the palace in protest. Cixi noted the objection and proceeded. The new emperor was Guangxu. He would spend his life inside a cage Cixi had built specifically to fit him. By 1898, the Qing dynasty was visibly failing. China had lost the First Sino-Japanese War in 1895. Humiliated by a nation it had long considered a cultural student, foreign powers were carving out spheres of influence across Chinese territory. The silver reserves were draining into indemnity payments. Emperor Guangxu, now 27 and technically in full control, had been reading the reformers. Kang Yuwei and Liang Qichao were brilliant intellectuals arguing that China needed to transform fundamentally. Constitutional government, modern schools, reformed military, industry. Guangxu agreed with them. On June 11, 1898, he began issuing edicts. For 103 days, the 100 Days Reform changed everything. New schools, a modern press, abolition of the old examination system, military restructuring. Provincial governors who opposed the changes were to be dismissed. The pace was extraordinary. One major edict almost every day. Cixi watched from the summer palace. The reformers understood she was the obstacle. They debated, in letters that were later found, whether to seize or assassinate her. They reached out to Yuan Shikai, the most powerful military commander, asking for his support. Yuan Shikai went to Cixi instead and told her everything. On September 21, 1898, Cixi returned to the Forbidden City and staged her counter-coup. Guangxu was arrested and moved to Yingtai, a small island in the South Lake of the Imperial Garden, connected to the shore by a single bridge. The bridge was watched. He would not leave it for 10 years. 6 of the reform leaders were arrested and executed in public. The 6 gentlemen of the 100 Days, Kang Yu-wei and Liang Chechao, escaped abroad. The edicts were cancelled. Everything reverted. When officials asked Cixi why she had stopped the reforms, her answer was not that the reforms were wrong. It was that Guangxu and the reformers had been prepared to give away too much, too fast, to foreign-educated advisers who did not understand China. She believed this sincerely. She may not have been entirely wrong about the method, even as she was catastrophically wrong about the outcome. In 1899, a movement spread through northern China that the Qing court found increasingly useful. The Boxers united in righteousness, a sect that combined martial arts practice with a belief in supernatural invulnerability to bullets, were killing Chinese Christians and foreign missionaries. Their slogan, "Support the Qing, destroy the foreigners." Cixi's advisers were divided. Some warned her the Boxers were delusional and dangerous. Others told her exactly what she wanted to hear, that the Boxer spirit could be wielded against the foreign powers who had humiliated China for 60 years. On June 21, 1900, Cixi issued a declaration of war on 8 foreign nations simultaneously: Britain, France, Germany, Russia, Japan, the United States, Austria, Hungary, and Italy. It was the single greatest strategic miscalculation of her career. The 8-nation alliance mobilized. By August, foreign troops had fought their way to Beijing. The Forbidden City was about to fall. Cixi, the woman who had controlled the most powerful imperial court in Asia, dressed herself in the plain clothes of a peasant woman, climbed into a cart, and fled west. The occupying powers looted the imperial palaces. The summer palace Cixi had lavished with China's naval funds was ransacked. The Boxer Protocol she was eventually forced to sign in 1901 imposed an indemnity of 450 million taels of silver. 1 toil for every person in China. Interest would continue for 39 years. She did not accept responsibility. She blamed the Boxers. She blamed local officials. She blamed the foreign powers for provoking her. Then, in the most striking reversal of her reign, she finally implemented the reforms she had destroyed in 1898. Modern schools, constitutional study commissions, military restructuring. The new policies she launched after 1902 were in many respects identical to Guangxu's 100 Days. They came a decade too late. In the autumn of 1908, both Cixi and Guangxu fell ill. Guangxu had been on Yingtai Island for a decade. Those allowed near him reported a man destroyed, thin, trembling, unable to keep food down. He kept a journal that recorded his hatred of Cixi in terms he had never dared speak aloud. He also wrote, obsessively, about reform. If she died first, he intended to act. She was 72. She knew she was dying. She knew he knew she was dying. On November 14th, 1908, Emperor Guangxu died. On November 15th, 1908, Cixi died. Before she died, she had time to make arrangements. She appointed the 2-year-old Puyi, grandnephew, another child, as the next emperor. She named Guangxu's widow as regent. She issued a final edict acknowledging that her reign had had failures. A century later, Chinese forensic scientists completed their analysis. Guangxu's remains contained arsenic at concentrations 2,000 times higher than normal human levels. Specifically in his hair, consistent with a single massive dose in the days before death. He had been poisoned. The source was never officially named. The timing makes the answer obvious. He would have outlived her by decades. He would have reversed everything. Someone, acting on orders or acting on reasonable inference about what orders would have been given, administered a lethal dose of arsenic to a prisoner on an island in the imperial garden. The prisoner died the day before his jailer. She had controlled China through puppet emperors for 47 years. She left it a 2-year-old on a throne, inside a system already collapsing under the weight of what she had failed to change and what she had spent everything trying to preserve. The Qing dynasty fell 3 years after her death.